My sister Jessica stood there laughing, her voice cutting through the family gathering like a knife. "Poor Sarah," she announced to everyone at our grandmother's memorial service, "still living paycheck to paycheck while the rest of us actually made something of ourselves." The room fell silent. I felt my cheeks burn as relatives avoided my eyes. Then the estate lawyer cleared his throat. "Excuse me," he said, looking directly at me. "Could you please state your full name for the record?" Jessica's laughter died instantly. Something was about to change everything. "Before we dive into this wild family drama, I would love to know where you are watching from. Have you ever experienced family betrayal that completely blindsided you?" Hit that like button if you are ready for a story about karma coming full circle, and do not forget to subscribe, because trust me, you will want to see how this sister gets exactly what she deserves. The lawyer, Mr. Harrison, gestured for me to follow him into the private study. My hands trembled as I walked past Jessica, whose smug expression had transformed into something resembling panic. The mahogany-paneled room felt suffocating as Mr. Harrison spread documents across the antique desk. "Sarah Elizabeth Morrison," he began, adjusting his glasses. "I have been trying to locate you for the past 6 months." My heart pounded. 6 months, grandmother had passed away only 3 weeks ago. "I am afraid there has been a significant misunderstanding regarding your grandmother's estate." He handed me a thick folder marked "Confidential, Estate of Margaret Morrison." Inside were bank statements, property deeds, and investment portfolios that made my head spin. The numbers were staggering. Millions of dollars, multiple properties, stock certificates dating back decades. "Your grandmother left specific instructions," Mr. Harrison continued. "She was very concerned about certain family members attempting to manipulate the inheritance process. She established a trust fund in your name when you were 18, but somehow the notifications never reached you." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean they never reached me?" "The correspondence was sent to your last known address, the apartment you shared with your sister Jessica 5 years ago. According to postal records, someone signed for all the certified letters." He pulled out delivery confirmations. Jessica's signature was unmistakably scrawled across each receipt. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. For years, Jessica had watched me struggle with student loans, work multiple jobs, and live in a tiny studio apartment while she drove luxury cars and took lavish vacations. She had always claimed her success came from smart investments and hard work. Now I understood the truth. "There is more," Mr. Harrison said grimly. "Your sister has been accessing funds from the estate account using forged documents. She convinced the bank that she was acting as your representative, claiming you had given her power of attorney during a mental health crisis." I stared at the forged signature on the power of attorney document. It was a crude imitation of my handwriting, but apparently convincing enough for the bank. Jessica had stolen not just money, but years of my life. While I had scraped together rent money and eaten ramen noodles for dinner, she had been living off my inheritance. "How much has she taken?" I whispered. "Approximately $400,000 over the past 5 years. She also took out a mortgage against the family lake house using fraudulent documentation claiming you were her business partner." The lake house, the beautiful property where we had spent childhood summers, where grandmother had taught me to fish and told me stories about our family history. Jessica had been renting it out as a luxury vacation property, pocketing thousands in rental income, while telling the family she was managing the property maintenance. "But why did grandmother set up the trust for me specifically?" I asked, trying to process the overwhelming information. Mr. Harrison smiled sadly. "Your grandmother was a shrewd woman. She saw how your sister treated you, how the rest of the family favored her because of her apparent success. She wanted to ensure you would be taken care of, but she also wanted to test the family's true character. She left instructions that if anyone attempted to interfere with your inheritance, additional consequences would be triggered." He handed me another document, a detailed letter in grandmother's familiar handwriting. My eyes filled with tears as I read her words. "My dearest Sarah, if you are reading this, then my worst fears have been confirmed. Someone in our family has betrayed your trust, and stolen what rightfully belongs to you. I have watched you struggle with grace and dignity while others prospered through deception. This inheritance is not just money, it is validation that your worth was always recognized by someone who truly loved you. The additional provisions in this will ensure that justice will be served to those who chose greed over family loyalty. Additional provisions. I looked up at Mr. Harrison. Your grandmother was thorough. She hired a private investigator to monitor the estate account. Every fraudulent transaction has been documented. She also included clauses that would strip other family members of their inheritances if they participated in or enabled fraud against you. The implications were staggering. Jessica was not just facing criminal charges, the entire family structure was about to crumble. Every family gathering where I had been treated as the poor relation, every snide comment about my financial struggles, every time I had been excluded from family investments and opportunities because I was not financially stable, all of it was based on Jessica's theft of my own money. What happens now? I asked, my voice stronger than I expected. Now we restore what was always yours and ensure that justice is served. But Sarah, I must warn you, when this information becomes public, your family dynamics will change forever. Some people will be angry that their comfortable lies have been exposed. Others will try to claim they were victims too. Are you prepared for that battle? I thought about Jessica's cruel laughter earlier, about years of financial stress that had nearly broken me, about the family who had watched me struggle without offering help, because they believed I was simply irresponsible with money. My grandmother had given me more than an inheritance. She had given me the power to expose the truth and reclaim my dignity. I am ready, I said firmly. Let's make sure everyone knows exactly who the real failure in this family has been. Mr. Harrison and I returned to the family gathering with a box of documents that would shatter every assumption these people had about me. The living room buzzed with post-memorial conversations, but I noticed Jessica hovering near the refreshment table, her eyes darting nervously between me and the lawyer. "Excuse me, everyone," Mr. Harrison announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to delivering life-changing news. "I need to address some important matters regarding Margaret Morrison's estate." The room gradually quieted. My Aunt Patricia, who had always treated me like a charity case, looked annoyed at the interruption. My cousin David, Jessica's longtime ally in family politics, smirked as if anticipating another humiliation for poor Sarah. Jessica forced a smile, but I could see sweat beading on her forehead. "There have been some irregularities in the estate management that require immediate clarification," Mr. Harrison continued. "Sarah Morrison, could you please step forward?" I walked to the center of the room, feeling every eye on me. For years, I had shrunk into corners at family gatherings, trying to make myself invisible when conversations turned to money and success. Today felt different. Today I stood tall. Sarah is the primary beneficiary of a substantial trust established by Margaret Morrison 5 years ago, Mr. Harrison announced. The trust includes $2 million in liquid assets, the lake house property, and a diversified investment portfolio currently valued at approximately $1.8 million. The silence was deafening. I watched faces around the room cycle through confusion, disbelief, and dawning realization. Aunt Patricia's mouth fell open. Cousin David's smirk vanished entirely. "That is impossible," Jessica interjected, her voice shrill. "Sarah has never had any money. Grandmother barely tolerated her. She was always disappointing the family with her poor choices." Mr. Harrison turned to Jessica with the expression of someone who had been waiting for this exact moment. "Actually, Jessica, your sister, has been financially stable for years. The trust has been generating income and accumulating value. Unfortunately, someone has been illegally accessing these funds through fraudulent documentation." He opened his briefcase and pulled out bank statements highlighted in yellow. $412,000 has been withdrawn from Sarah's trust account over the past 5 years. The withdrawals were authorized using forged power of attorney documents and false claims about Sarah's mental competency. "This is ridiculous," Jessica sputtered. "I would never." We have handwriting analysis confirming the forgeries, Mr. Harrison interrupted smoothly. We also have security camera footage from the bank showing you making these transactions while claiming to represent Sarah's interests during her supposed mental health crisis. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I watched my family members' expressions shift from confusion to horror as they realized what Jessica had done. More importantly, I watched them realize what it meant about their own treatment of me. Additionally, Mr. Harrison continued, we have evidence that Jessica has been operating an illegal vacation rental business using the lake house property, which belongs to Sarah's trust. She has collected approximately $60,000 in rental income over the past 2 years. Aunt Patricia found her voice first. Jessica, tell me this is not true. Tell me you did not steal from your own sister. But Jessica's face had gone pale, and she was backing toward the door. You do not understand, she said desperately. Sarah was never going to do anything with the money anyway. She has no business sense, no investment knowledge. I was protecting the family assets by forging legal documents and lying to financial institutions. Mr. Harrison's tone was ice cold. By allowing your sister to struggle financially while you lived off her inheritance, by manipulating your entire family into believing Sarah was irresponsible while you funded your lifestyle with stolen money. The most devastating part was watching my family members' faces as they processed their own complicity. Every time they had excluded me from family business discussions because I was financially unreliable. Every time they had made me feel ashamed of my modest lifestyle while praising Jessica's success. Every time they had chosen Jessica's version of events over mine, without question. Uncle Robert, who had always been grandmother's favorite, stepped forward. Sarah, I owe you an apology. We all do. We should have questioned how Jessica could afford her lifestyle on her stated income. We should have investigated when you were struggling despite being just as hardworking as anyone else in this family. Should have investigated, I replied, finding my voice stronger than I expected. You should have simply treated me with basic respect instead of making assumptions about my character based on my bank account. Jessica made one final desperate attempt. Sarah, we can work this out privately. Family should not air dirty laundry in front of lawyers. We can arrange a payment plan. A payment plan. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Jessica, you did not just steal money. You stole 5 years of my life. You stole my relationship with this family. You stole my sense of self-worth. You watched me struggle with debt, watched me work multiple jobs, watched me skip family vacations because I could not afford them all while you were spending my inheritance. Mr. Harrison stepped forward again. There is one more matter to address. Margaret Morrison included specific provisions in her will regarding family members who enabled or participated in fraud against Sarah. She was very clear about the consequences. He pulled out another document. Any family member who knowingly participated in marginalizing Sarah based on false information about her financial status will have their own inheritance reduced by 50%. Those funds will be added to Sarah's trust. The room erupted in panicked voices. Cousins who had mocked my thrift store clothes were suddenly calculating how much money they were about to lose. Aunts and uncles who had excluded me from family investment opportunities were realizing their comfortable retirement plans had just evaporated. Grandmother was watching, I said quietly, but my voice carried across the chaos. She saw how you treated me. She saw how you believed Jessica's lies without question. She saw how you made me feel like a burden on this family when the truth was that I was funding Jessica's fake success. Jessica bolted for the door, but Mr. Harrison called after her calmly. Jessica, I should mention that criminal charges are being filed tomorrow morning. I would recommend contacting an attorney immediately. As she disappeared into the night, I looked around the room at the family that had made me feel small and worthless for years. The power dynamic had shifted completely, but I felt no satisfaction in their panic. Instead, I felt something I had not experienced in years, the freedom that comes with knowing the truth. The reading of the complete will is scheduled for next week, Mr. Harrison announced. I suggest everyone use that time to consider how they want to rebuild relationships that have been damaged by deception. As family members filed out in stunned silence, I remained in the center of grandmother's living room, finally understanding why she had always winked at me during family gatherings. She had known all along. She had seen through Jessica's facade and been planning this moment of truth for years. The week following the revelation passed in a whirlwind of phone calls, legal meetings, and family members desperately trying to rewrite history. Some relatives attempted to claim they had always suspected Jessica's deception, while others begged for forgiveness and understanding. But it was the unexpected allies who emerged from the chaos that truly changed everything. The first call came from my cousin Maria, Jessica's childhood best friend who I barely knew. We had rarely spoken at family gatherings because she had always been part of Jessica's inner circle. Her voice was shaking when she reached out. "Sarah, I need to tell you something that I should have said years ago," Maria began. "I knew Jessica was lying about her income. I work at the same company she claimed was paying her such a high salary, and I knew her actual position and pay grade. I suspected she was getting money from somewhere else, but I never imagined she was stealing from you." Maria's confession opened floodgates. She revealed that Jessica had convinced several family members to invest in fake business ventures, using her apparent success as proof of her financial acumen. Aunt Patricia had given Jessica $20,000 to invest in a sure-thing real estate deal that never existed. Cousin David had loaned her $15,000 for a business expansion that was pure fiction. "She has been running a long con on the entire family," Maria explained during our coffee meeting. "I have been feeling guilty about staying quiet for years. When I saw what happened at the memorial service, I realized my silence made me complicit in your suffering." The second unexpected ally was Jake Morrison, a distant cousin I had only met briefly at childhood family reunions. He reached out through social media with information that made my blood run cold. "I am a private investigator now," Jake explained during our phone call. "I actually helped grandmother research Jessica's activities before she died. There is more evidence than what the lawyer shared publicly. Jessica has been forging documents for years, not just the power of attorney. She created fake business registration papers, fraudulent tax documents, and even a bogus letter of recommendation that helped her get a promotion at work." Jake had spent months documenting Jessica's web of lies at grandmother's request. The evidence was overwhelming: credit cards opened in my name that I never knew about, loan applications submitted using my social security number, and even a mortgage application where Jessica claimed I was her business partner and co-applicant. "Your grandmother wanted to make sure Jessica could never claim the fraud was a misunderstanding or a family dispute," Jake explained. "She built an airtight criminal case before she died. She knew Jessica would never admit guilt unless faced with irrefutable proof." The most powerful ally, however, was someone I never expected: Robert Townsend, Jessica's ex-boyfriend, who had been at the memorial service. He had dated Jessica for 3 years and had witnessed her deception firsthand. His call came at midnight, 2 days after the will reading. "Sarah, I cannot sleep knowing what I know," Robert said. "Jessica made me promise never to tell anyone, but after seeing what she put you through, I cannot stay silent anymore. I was there when she bragged about how easy it was to fool the bank. I was there when she laughed about your financial struggles while wearing jewelry bought with your money. I was there when she called you stupid for not figuring out what she was doing." Robert's testimony was devastating. He had recordings on his phone of Jessica discussing her schemes, including a particularly cruel conversation where she mocked my work ethic while planning to steal more money from my trust. He had photos of Jessica's lifestyle that clearly exceeded her legitimate income, including receipts for luxury purchases made on the same days she accessed my trust funds. "She made me an accessory to her crimes," Robert admitted. "I should have reported her years ago, but I was scared and stupid. I am ready to testify against her now if it helps you get justice." As my network of allies grew, so did my understanding of Jessica's true nature. She had not just stolen from me. She had manipulated every relationship in our family for personal gain. She had convinced our parents to co-sign loans she never intended to repay. She had borrowed money from elderly relatives using false emergencies. She had even convinced grandmother's neighbors to invest in fake charities she claimed to be managing. The most heartbreaking discovery came from Maria's additional investigation. Jessica had been intercepting birthday cards and Christmas gifts sent to me by extended family members, including checks from distant relatives who thought they were helping me through difficult times. She had been stealing my mail for years, redirecting money intended to support me during my struggles. She set up a post office box using your name, Maria explained, showing me the documentation. Any mail sent to your old address has been forwarded there for the past 5 years. She has been collecting sympathy money that family members sent when they heard you were struggling financially. The irony was suffocating. Family members had been trying to help me all along, but Jessica had intercepted their generosity and used it to fund her own lifestyle while allowing me to believe I was abandoned and unsupported. By the end of the week, I had assembled a comprehensive case against Jessica that went far beyond the original trust fund fraud. Jake's investigation had uncovered identity theft, mail fraud, tax evasion, and loan fraud spanning nearly a decade. Robert's testimony provided evidence of premeditation and malicious intent. Maria's financial records showed a pattern of Jessica defrauding multiple family members through fake investment schemes. But the most crucial ally emerged just as I thought I had uncovered the full scope of Jessica's crimes. Detective Sarah Williams, from the Financial Crimes Unit, who had been investigating Jessica independently based on suspicious banking activity reports. "We have been building a case against your sister for 6 months," Detective Williams explained during our meeting. "Banks flagged unusual patterns in trust fund withdrawals, and we discovered the fraudulent power of attorney documents. Your grandmother's lawyer contacted us when she died, knowing that Jessica would likely escalate her criminal activity once she thought the oversight was gone. The detective revealed that Jessica had attempted to liquidate my entire trust fund just 2 weeks after grandmother's funeral, claiming I had suffered a nervous breakdown and needed immediate psychiatric care. The bank had been suspicious enough to delay the transaction, which triggered the investigation that led to this moment. Your sister was planning to disappear with over $3 million, Detective Williams said. She had already applied for a passport under a false name and was researching countries without extradition treaties. If the memorial service had not happened when it did, she would have vanished with everything. As I sat in my apartment that night, surrounded by legal documents and evidence of Jessica's betrayal, I realized that grandmother had orchestrated something far more complex than a simple inheritance distribution. She had created a network of accountability that would ensure justice was served even after her death. The memorial service had not been the end of Jessica's deception. It had been the beginning of her complete downfall. Every lie she had told, every dollar she had stolen, every relationship she had manipulated was about to be exposed in brutal detail. But I also realized that the most important battle was yet to come. Jessica would not go down without a fight, and I was about to discover that some allies could become enemies faster than I ever imagined. 2 days before Jessica's criminal trial was set to begin, my carefully constructed alliance began to crumble in the most devastating way possible. It started with a phone call from Detective Williams that turned my world upside down once again. "Sarah, we have a problem," she said, her voice tight with frustration. "Robert Townsend has recanted his testimony. He claims he fabricated the recordings and evidence against Jessica to get revenge after their breakup." My heart stopped. Robert's evidence was crucial to proving Jessica's premeditation and malicious intent. Without his testimony about her bragging and planning, the prosecution would struggle to prove the fraud was anything more than a family financial dispute that had gotten out of hand. "That is impossible," I stammered. "I heard the recordings myself. He showed me receipts, photos, documented evidence of her spending patterns." "He is claiming everything was manipulated or taken out of context," Detective Williams explained. "He filed an affidavit this morning stating that he was coerced into providing false testimony by family pressure and emotional manipulation." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. I had trusted Robert, believed his remorse was genuine, counted on his courage to help expose Jessica's crimes. Now I realized I had been played by someone even more cunning than my sister. Within hours, the situation deteriorated further. Maria called in tears, her voice barely recognizable through her panic. "Sarah, I am so sorry," she sobbed. "Jessica contacted me last night. She has evidence that could destroy my career. Years ago, I made some mistakes with expense reports at work, and somehow she documented everything. She is threatening to expose me if I testify against her." My network of allies was collapsing faster than I could process. Maria's testimony about Jessica's fake business ventures was essential to proving the broader pattern of fraud. Without her cooperation, several other family members would likely escape consequences for their role in enabling Jessica's deception. "What kind of evidence does she have?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. "Photos of altered receipts, copies of questionable expense claims, documentation of times I bent. Company policies," Maria admitted. "It was years ago and I thought I had covered my tracks, but Jessica was collecting information on everyone even then. She has been building leverage against family members for years." The worst revelation came the next morning when Jake Morrison, my private investigator cousin, called with news that made me question everything I thought I knew about my allies. "Sarah, I need to come clean about something," Jake said, his voice heavy with guilt. "When grandmother hired me to investigate Jessica, she also asked me to investigate other family members. I found evidence of questionable activities involving several of our relatives, including some of the people who are now supporting you." My stomach dropped. "What are you telling me, Jake?" "Cousin David has been running an illegal gambling operation through his construction business. Aunt Patricia has been claiming fraudulent tax deductions for years. Uncle Robert has been embezzling from his company's pension fund. Jessica has evidence of all of it, and she is using that information to force people to withdraw their support for you." The scope of Jessica's manipulation was breathtaking. She had not just stolen my money, she had spent years collecting blackmail material on our entire family. Every relative who had supported her over me, every family member who had believed her lies about my financial irresponsibility had been compromised by their own secrets and vulnerabilities. "There is more," Jake continued reluctantly. "Jessica has been in contact with family members offering to destroy evidence of their crimes in exchange for their testimony against you. She is claiming that you were actually complicit in the trust fund fraud, that you knew about the money all along and were planning to frame her when you got caught." I felt the walls closing in around me. Jessica was not just defending herself. She was launching a counterattack designed to destroy my credibility and paint me as the real criminal. She was using years of collected blackmail material to turn my own family against me. The situation reached its breaking point when Mr. Harrison called with the most devastating news yet. "Sarah, I have just received notice that 3 key witnesses have withdrawn their testimony," he said grimly. "Additionally, Jessica's legal team has filed a motion claiming prosecutorial misconduct and emotional coercion of witnesses. They are arguing that your grandmother's investigation was illegal surveillance and that all evidence obtained through Jake's private investigation should be thrown out." My carefully built case was crumbling. Without witness testimony, without Jake's investigation, without the financial records that prove the pattern of fraud, Jessica might actually escape justice. Worse, her counter-accusations were gaining traction with family members who were terrified of having their own secrets exposed. The final blow came when Detective Williams called to inform me that the district attorney was considering dropping the criminal charges entirely. "The case has become too complicated with all the witness recantations and counterclaims," she explained. "Without solid testimony and evidence, we cannot prove intent to defraud beyond reasonable doubt. Jessica's lawyers are arguing this is a civil family dispute, not criminal fraud." That night, I sat in my apartment surrounded by legal documents that suddenly seemed worthless. Jessica had outmaneuvered me using tactics I never could have anticipated. She had turned my moment of triumph into the most humiliating defeat imaginable. But what hurt most was the realization that my own family members had chosen to protect their secrets rather than support justice. People I had trusted had abandoned me the moment their own interests were threatened. The alliance I thought was built on truth and righteousness had actually been constructed on a foundation of mutual vulnerability. I stared at my phone, watching text messages pour in from relatives who were now claiming they had been misled about Jessica's crimes and manipulated into supporting my vindictive pursuit of family money. And the narrative was shifting, and I was being painted as the villain in my own story. Jessica had not just stolen my money, she had stolen my family, my reputation, and my chance for justice. As I fell asleep that night, I wondered if evil truly did triumph over good, if manipulation really was more powerful than truth, and if I had been naive to believe that justice would prevail. I had no idea that my grandmother had anticipated this exact scenario and prepared one final surprise that would change everything. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor who would transform my defeat into the most complete victory I could have imagined. Eleanor Blackwood, a woman in her 70s with sharp eyes and an expensive briefcase, appeared at my door at exactly 8 o'clock. "Sarah Morrison," she said with a slight smile. "I am Eleanor Blackwood, your grandmother's estate attorney for the past 30 years. We need to talk immediately." I was confused. Mr. Harrison had been handling all estate matters, and I had never heard of Eleanor Blackwood. She settled into my small living room with the confidence of someone accustomed to controlling situations. "Thomas Harrison is an excellent lawyer, but he was only handling the public portion of your grandmother's estate planning," Eleanor explained. "I have been managing the private investigation and contingency planning for what your grandmother called the nuclear option." Eleanor opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder marked Contingency Protocol, Blackmail and Witness Tampering. My hands shook as I realized what I was looking at. "Your grandmother anticipated that Jessica would attempt to destroy evidence and intimidate witnesses," Eleanor continued calmly. "She predicted that family members would prioritize self-preservation over justice when their own secrets were threatened. She prepared for this exact scenario." The first document Eleanor showed me was a comprehensive dossier on every family member who had withdrawn support for my case. Grandmother had not just hired Jake to investigate Jessica. She had commissioned a team of private investigators to document every illegal activity, every hidden scandal, every compromising situation involving our entire extended family. "She knew Jessica was collecting blackmail material, so she collected better evidence," Eleanor explained. "But more importantly, she documented Jessica's blackmail activities themselves, which constitute additional felony charges." Eleanor spread out photographs, audio recordings, and documented communications showing Jessica explicitly threatening family members with exposure unless they withdrew testimony against her. Every conversation where she offered to destroy evidence in exchange for false testimony had been recorded by investigators wearing hidden cameras. "Witness intimidation and evidence tampering are federal crimes," Eleanor said with satisfaction. "Jessica's attempts to manipulate your case have actually provided prosecutors with ironclad evidence of additional felonies that carry mandatory prison sentences." But the most devastating evidence was yet to come. Eleanor pulled out a laptop and played a video recording that made my jaw drop. It showed Jessica meeting with Robert Townsend in a coffee shop, handing him an envelope of cash, while explicitly instructing him to recant his testimony and claim everything had been fabricated. "We have been monitoring Jessica's activities since the memorial service," Eleanor explained. "Every bribe, every threat, every attempt to obstruct justice has been documented with multiple forms of evidence. She has committed more crimes trying to cover up her original fraud than she committed in the initial theft." Eleanor then revealed the most brilliant aspect of grandmother's planning. Every family member who had been blackmailed by Jessica had also been secretly offered immunity deals if they cooperated with the investigation. The immunity agreements had been prepared years in advance, waiting for the moment when Jessica would attempt to use her leverage. "Your grandmother knew that good people sometimes make mistakes, but she distinguished between those who made errors and those who actively chose evil," Eleanor said. "She provided paths to redemption for family members who were willing to choose justice over self-preservation." Within hours, Eleanor had contacted every compromised family member and offered them a choice: continue supporting Jessica's obstruction of justice and face prosecution for their own crimes or accept immunity in exchange for honest testimony about Jessica's blackmail activities. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Maria called first sobbing with relief as she accepted the immunity deal and provided detailed testimony about Jessica's threats. Jake followed, turning over additional evidence he had been holding back out of fear for his own legal exposure. Even Robert Townsend, faced with video evidence of accepting bribes, agreed to cooperate fully with prosecutors. But Eleanor was not finished. She revealed that grandmother had prepared for the possibility that the local district attorney might be intimidated by Jessica's legal maneuvering. She had compiled evidence packages for federal prosecutors who were far less susceptible to small-town political pressure. The FBI Financial Crimes Task Force has been reviewing Jessica's case for the past week, Eleanor announced. Tomorrow morning, federal agents will arrest your sister on charges of wire fraud, money laundering, identity theft, witness tampering, and racketeering. The federal charges carry sentences of 20 to 30 years in prison. The transformation was stunning. Within 24 hours, my collapsed case had become the strongest criminal prosecution our family had ever seen. Jessica's attempts to escape justice had provided prosecutors with evidence of crimes she never could have imagined being charged with. The final ally who emerged during this period was someone I never expected. Detective Sarah Williams revealed that she had been working undercover for the FBI Financial Crimes Unit all along. The local investigation had been a front for a much larger federal operation targeting financial fraud schemes in our region. Jessica's case was part of a broader investigation into organized fraud networks, Detective Williams explained. Her activities fit a pattern we have been tracking across multiple states. Your grandmother's evidence helped us connect Jessica to a larger criminal organization that has been operating for years. Eleanor smiled as she watched my amazement. Your grandmother was not just seeking justice for you, Sarah. She was ensuring that Jessica could never victimize anyone else again. The evidence we have collected will shut down an entire network of financial predators who prey on family trust and legal system weaknesses. As federal agents prepared to arrest Jessica, I realized that grandmother had orchestrated something far more complex than family justice. She had created a comprehensive takedown of corruption that would protect countless future victims while ensuring that truth ultimately triumphed over manipulation. The woman I had thought was simply a loving grandmother had actually been a strategic mastermind who understood that real justice required patience, planning, and the wisdom to anticipate every possible counterattack. Jessica's greatest mistake had been underestimating the depth of grandmother's love and the extent of her preparation. Tomorrow, the sister who had mocked me for being poor would discover that stealing from family was the least serious crime she had committed. The FBI raid on Jessica's apartment happened at dawn, and news of her arrest spread through our family faster than wildfire. By noon, every relative who had mocked my financial struggles was calling to offer apologies and support. The same people who had abandoned me when Jessica's blackmail threatened their secrets were suddenly eager to distance themselves from her crimes. But I felt no satisfaction watching them scramble to rewrite history. The true victory was not their panic. It was the phone call I received from Detective Williams that afternoon. "Sarah, we found everything," she said, her voice filled with excitement. Jessica's apartment was like a criminal evidence warehouse. She had detailed files on dozens of potential victims, forged documents for crimes she had not even committed yet, and enough stolen financial information to destroy hundreds of lives. The scope of Jessica's criminal enterprise was breathtaking. She had been running fraud schemes targeting elderly relatives across multiple states, using our family connections to gain access to vulnerable seniors with substantial assets. The money she stole from me had been seed funding for a much larger operation that could have devastated countless families. Eleanor Blackwood arrived at my apartment that evening with news that completed Jessica's downfall. The federal prosecutors have evidence linking Jessica to 12 separate fraud cases involving elderly victims, Eleanor announced. She was part of a criminal network that specifically targeted family members of successful seniors. Your case broke open an investigation that will protect thousands of potential victims. But the most meaningful victory came from an unexpected source. Over the following weeks, as word spread about Jessica's arrest and the full scope of her crimes, I began receiving calls from relatives I barely knew. Distant cousins, great aunts, family friends, who had been targeted by Jessica's scams, but had been too embarrassed or confused to report them. She convinced me to invest my retirement savings in a fake medical research company. My great aunt Helen told me through tears. I lost $40,000, but thought I was too old and stupid to understand modern investments. When I heard about your case, I realized I had been the victim of a crime, not a foolish investment. One by one, Jessica's victims found the courage to come forward. The woman who had mocked my financial struggles had actually been systematically destroying the financial security of our most vulnerable family members for years. Every dollar she stole from me had enabled her to hurt more innocent people. The criminal trial lasted 3 months, and I testified about not just the money Jessica had stolen, but the years of emotional abuse and family manipulation that had made her crimes possible. Standing in that federal courtroom describing how she had laughed at my struggles while wearing jewelry bought with my inheritance felt like reclaiming my voice after years of being silenced. Jessica received a sentence of 25 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for the first 15 years. The judge's words at sentencing captured everything I had wanted to say for years. The defendant did not simply steal money. She stole trust, dignity, and family relationships. She weaponized love and loyalty to commit crimes that destroyed the financial security of vulnerable victims who trusted her because of family connections. This sentence reflects not just the monetary damage, but the emotional and psychological harm caused by her calculated betrayal of family bonds. But the most important transformation was not Jessica's punishment. It was the family I built in the aftermath of her destruction. Maria and I became genuine friends bonded by our shared experience of Jessica's manipulation. Jake started a legitimate private investigation business, using his skills to help other families uncover financial abuse. Eleanor Blackwood became a mentor who taught me how to manage my inheritance responsibly while protecting other potential victims of family fraud. Most surprisingly, several family members who had initially abandoned me during Jessica's blackmail campaign proved capable of genuine change. Aunt Patricia, faced with the reality of her own financial mistakes, entered counseling and began making amends for years of treating me poorly based on Jessica's lies. Uncle Robert quit his job and voluntarily reported his own embezzlement, serving 6 months in prison, but emerging as a man committed to rebuilding his integrity. The family gatherings we hold now are smaller but infinitely more meaningful. We talk openly about money mistakes and the importance of protecting vulnerable members rather than exploiting them. The culture of secrecy and shame that enabled Jessica's crimes has been replaced by transparency and accountability. I used part of my inheritance to establish a foundation that helps elderly victims of family financial fraud. Working with Eleanor and Detective Williams, we have created resources for families dealing with similar situations and legal support for victims who might otherwise be too embarrassed or confused to seek justice. The lake house that Jessica illegally rented for profit has become a retreat center where families recovering from financial abuse can heal and rebuild relationships. Grandmother would have loved knowing that the property she cherished became a place of restoration rather than exploitation. Most importantly, I learned that justice is not just about punishment, it is about transformation. Jessica's crimes forced our family to confront uncomfortable truths about favoritism, secrecy, and the ways we enable dysfunction by avoiding difficult conversations. The pain of her betrayal became the catalyst for building healthier relationships based on honesty rather than appearances. 5 years later, I am financially secure, surrounded by people who value integrity over image, and engaged in work that prevents others from suffering what I experienced. The sister who mocked my poverty gave me the greatest gift imaginable. She forced me to discover my own strength and showed me the difference between family by blood and family by choice. Sometimes the most devastating betrayals become doorways to the most meaningful victories. Jessica thought she was destroying my life, but she actually gave me the opportunity to build something far better than what I had lost. Looking back, I realized that grandmother's greatest inheritance was not money. It was the lesson that truth always finds a way to surface, that justice may be delayed, but cannot be denied, and that real family is defined by love and loyalty rather than shared DNA. The woman who laughed at my financial struggles is now serving a quarter century in federal prison, while the woman she mocked has built a life filled with purpose, authentic relationships, and the deep satisfaction that comes from turning personal pain into protection for others. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone's cruelty actually became the catalyst for positive change in your life? What would you have done if you discovered a family member had been stealing from you for years while watching you struggle? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Sometimes the most painful betrayals teach us the most valuable lessons about who deserves our trust and loyalty. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life tales of family drama, justice served, and the surprising ways that karma finds its way back to those who deserve it. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that truth and justice can prevail even when the odds seem impossible. Thank you for taking this journey with me, and remember, sometimes the people who hurt us the most end up giving us exactly what we needed to become who we were meant to be. Stay strong, trust in justice, and never let anyone make you feel small for struggling while they prosper through deception.